Kunal, I could not wait to record this week's episode. We've had such an exciting week. And I think my personal highlight was that Jenson Button said that Formula One should be as interesting as Pokemon Go. And that's the only way it can attract younger audiences.
His retirement plans are to probably market Formula One.
I think he'll whack you if you say retirement. But Formula One should actually get Pokemon Go to install, the Pokemon monsters, as they call it, at all the various racing circuits. And maybe that's the best way to actually get youngsters to the races.
And, maybe the giant lizard that we saw during free practice was their live testing of this. I mean, the lizard was somewhat of a monster, a meter-long monster. But no wonder they decided to test this on Max Verstappen, the sport's only teenaged driver.
And we know that Max Verstappen loves his video games, so does it get any more perfect?
Wow.
But Kunal, the only issue with having Pokemon Go monsters on track is that fans would then be, running onto track with their phones in their hands to catch the monsters, walking around like we saw the marshal in Singapore do. Though now thinking aloud, I'm wondering if that marshal was actually a brilliant Johnny Walker ploy, keep walking.
The new owners of Formula One said that they're going to spend the next few months listening to everyone. I think they better be listening to us because this is a brilliant idea, of course, inspired by Jenson Button. And they should also be listening to us because there's a few of us adding humor to Formula One every single week. But I must add that when the humor is on Lewis Hamilton, not everyone sees it as humor. But okay, let's move.
I think everyone is an understatement.
Let's move on. Speaking of Max Verstappen, the sport's only teenage driver, Niki Lauda actually had a killer reply to their ongoing psychiatrist banter. So Lauda said that both of us will go to the psychiatrist, but the psychiatrist will decide which one of us will stay.
I love Niki Lauda. He is never not funny. He's just always so hilarious. But on that note, the one person I'm sure not laughing with Niki Lauda is Lewis Hamilton. Did you see the bromance between Rosberg and Lauda, taking it up several notches higher? They partied together in Singapore. I'm wondering how much vodka they had, but and Wolf joined them too. So it was a complete trio.
On the other hand, Maurizio Arrivabene of Ferrari celebrated Ferrari's missed podium in the lockup, or so claim the reports. Ferrari butted Raikkonen off the podium and apparently Arrivabene's cigarette butted him into the lockup. So, unclaimed reports, of course, but well...
I wouldn't be surprised. There's a popular phrase that Singapore is a fine city. And I'm sure Arrivabene was fined if not locked up. I'm just thinking, Kunal, maybe Kimi Raikkonen actually took his revenge on the team by tipping off the cops, about what was going on.
And there's a new power battle brewing in Formula One. It isn't between Mercedes, Ferrari, Renault and Honda.
Honda doesn't have any power, by the way.
It is actually between Ecclestone and the new man chasing power in Formula One, Chase Carey.
And going by his name purely, he should be doing pretty well in Formula One. There's Chase and car in his name. The other person with car in her name, Carmen Jorda, her success in Formula One is dubious. Maybe I'll have to eat my words.
I actually just remembered the song Chasing Cars, but let's hope Chase goes chasing cars, unlike Ecclestone, who went about chasing money. And there's a lot of expectations actually from a lot of quarters, the fans, actually the most. And let's hope they do not go the McLaren Honda way.
Well, McLaren Honda have said that they'll be matching Mercedes in 2017. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Alonso even said he'll be eyeing the title in 2017.
Wow.
But, honestly, comparing themselves to Mercedes is a moving goalpost because who knows if Mercedes will be the quickest car in 2017. Anyway, Alonso also said that if Formula One isn't interesting in 2017, he'll go away.
He's been saying that for a while. And Mr. Chase Carey, I hope you're really listening because your biggest short-term task would be to retain Formula One's most complete driver and give him a competitive car. Let him go chase a few victories.
Okay, Kunal, that is it. No more chase jokes. So, honestly, I'm wondering if he's going to start a trend in the paddock with his mustache. Okay, let's stop. Stop.
Mr. Chase Carey, thank you for all those jokes. Time to move on. This time it's Max Verstappen. He had the perfect race for a teenager. A Godzilla on track in free practice and then the Hulk in the race.
Actually, Kunal, some pretty awesome characters to attract the younger audiences. Maybe not Godzilla, but oh well.
By the way, did you know that NASCAR has named a race after the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? I mean, how cool is that?
Mr. Chase Carey, I hope you're listening to that.
Actually, on that note, the Singapore Grand Prix should be called the Dark Knight without the K.
Kunal, I think that's the funniest joke you've cracked in a while.
Thank you.
And there was Forrest Gump on track 2 in Singapore. Run, Forrest, run. If that marshal had his radio set on, which he didn't, that's probably the message race control would have sent him.
But seriously, talking of that episode, a gross mismanagement, and I really hope the FIA will actually get penalized for this.
Technically speaking, that marshal should have been fined 50 Singapore dollars for jaywalking. I remember that I was fined when I studied in Singapore many years ago for jaywalking.
I think you're the ambassador of jaywalking amongst a lot of people I know. And anyway, since we're at the topic of Singapore, let's finally talk about the Singapore Grand Prix. By now, we all know it was Rosberg's 22nd win, his 200th Formula One race. He's now 8 points ahead, and never before has the Hamilton versus Rosberg battle seen such wild swings on the championship points table. And we're already in the middle of a thrilling season, and let's admit it, that Rosberg's race-by-race approach seems to be working for him.
I still can't get over Rosberg's pole position lap. He was 7/10 quicker than Hamilton, and that's pretty much his highest margin ever. And it's just amazing that he could pull together such a great lap under all that pressure. Kunal, if you remember, we'd said in the last podcast that the Singapore race result will have a larger bearing on the Drivers' Championship, and I guess it already has.
Yes, but Mithila, I am not taking sides yet. Rosberg, of course, won his third consecutive first ever race, but I keep reminding myself that he is up against the supremely talented Lewis Hamilton, and you can never rule Hamilton out. And let's also look at the numbers this way, that there is still nearly a third of the season to go. There are 6 races, and anything could happen.
I am already so excited for the next 6 races, Kunal. But I absolutely hope that it's going to go down to the wire.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, absolutely. But here's another interesting statistic. So never before has a driver won 8 races in a season and not gone on to win the championship.
Oops. I hope Nico Rosberg is listening, and I hope that somewhere motivates him even further. Talking of going down to the wire, Rosberg's victory in Singapore did go down to the wire thanks to Mercedes actually. Their smart tyre strategy got Hamilton back onto the podium, but that almost cost Rosberg his win. So I wonder how this story would have panned out in 2 cases. First is if the Singapore Grand Prix had been a lap or 2 longer, and second, if what happened to Rosberg at the end of the race had actually happened to Lewis Hamilton.
Well, so much for Mercedes favouring Rosberg, I guess.
I hope the Hamilton troll army is listening.
I don't think we've done anything to piss them off and tune them out yet.
Well, trust me, if you go through my Twitter feed over the Singapore Grand Prix, I used to wake up to hundreds of tweets from the troll army. Well, okay, I'm kidding, but there were at least 50 tweets out there. I probably read them twice, hence 100.
Well, anyway, here are a few more statistics from Singapore. So Mercedes is the first team ever to score a double podium.
Interesting.
Wow. And no team has ever scored a 1-2 here. That's amazing.
Yes, and my favorite statistic is, of course, the 100% safety car record. And this weekend's race actually was Bernd Maylander, our safety car driver's 300 Grand Prix.
Wow, I'm going to clap
Yes,
for that.
we got to applaud him driving that Mercedes as well. Since we're at the topic, let's admit Nico Rosberg did get lucky in Singapore. And no, this isn't because Hamilton was unable to match him. It was because of him missing his pit window for his last enforced pit stop. You know, had there been a late race safety car period, which is possible in Singapore anytime, he would have had drivers on fresher tires actually chasing and hunting him down.
Unfortunately, Kimi Raikkonen wasn't as lucky. And that's despite him overtaking Hamilton on track. I'm glad he's working on his overtaking though, Kunal.
A rare moment that Formula One allowed him. Actually, Hamilton allowed him.
But I wonder what Ferrari was thinking. I don't think they were thinking at all. I don't understand why they would pit him and why they would compromise track position at a street race. And that too, you know, when you're up against a Mercedes and you have to rely on them making a mistake to get past.
And I guess they didn't know too. And let's admit it, that they panicked. And post-race, they were all over the press trying to justify it. Ferrari said that Raikkonen drove like a world champion. Hey, but guess what? You guys did not act like a world champion team. Although I must admit that Vettel's 22nd position start, which ended up in P5 at the checkered flag, was some consolation. But whatever, I mean, you miss getting Kimi Raikkonen on the podium, and that in itself is a sin. And by the way, we just love hearing him in the interviews, even more so when they're on the podium.
We love Kimi Raikkonen, don't we, Kunal? But I loved hearing him on the radio too. I think he's back in his element, Kimi Raikkonen. It was hilarious. Are we pitting or not? And then the other one, Kunal. How much faster do you want me to be? I'm in the pit lane.
That was absolutely hilarious.
A Kimi Raikkonen classic.
I cannot believe that Ferrari actually did not know that he was in the pit lane. No wonder they screwed up his tyre strategy. But Ferrari, thank you very much for the jokes.
I think we can say they've been the butt of our jokes this podcast. But Daniel Ricciardo, thank you for the podium. That was a brilliant race. Good job.
He actually deserves an applaud. And by the way, he was my choice of the driver of the day. Absolutely.
I'll agree with you on that.
Hands down.
But Daniel's silently and smilingly been taking podiums while Max has taken all the attention. And I think we're guilty of that too. So this is Daniel's 4th podium in 5 races. Wow. And he's had more second place finishes than any driver on the grid. Or you know what? He's had as many second place finishes as Rosberg and Hamilton put together.
Another round of applause, actually.
That is pretty awesome.
Imagine this, in an era when Mercedes is dominating, to have more second place finishes than any driver, including the Mercedes drivers, by itself is a hallmark. So probably also my driver of the season choice, okay? In Singapore, I loved his chase in the end. 25 odd seconds, 14 laps, and there's nothing like an epic chase to welcome Chase Carey to the first ever Formula One paddock visit.
I thought we agreed on no more chase jokes.
Max Verstappen, bad start, and then finished 6th behind Sebastian Vettel. I wouldn't really term that as a good race for Max.
But you know, Max Verstappen is showing all the makings of a world champion, Kunal.
We know that.
And he is learning from the best, Lewis Hamilton. Because like Lewis, he has also started blaming his clutch for his start failures.
At some point, I think Nico Hülkenberg will also get up and say, I blame Max's clutch for me crashing out of the Singapore Grand Prix.
But thank God and thank Red Bull Racing for letting us enjoy the Kvyat versus Verstappen battle. Now that was pretty awesome. I was almost wondering when they'd employ team orders and whether Kvyat would actually shout back, "No!"
You know, this actually reminded me of the days when Sauber was the Ferrari B team and then Sauber drivers would end up helping the Ferrari drivers, whatever. But I admire Danny Kiewat's guts. So the last time he was demoted for attacking former Red Bull Racing prodigy Sebastian Vettel. And it luckily did not, or maybe it did cross his mind that if he took things too far with the current prodigy Max Verstappen, what would happen to his racing career?
Psychologically speaking, it seems that Kiewat got his closure from that entire episode with Max Verstappen. After the race, Kiewat actually declared that I am back to feeling the passion or something like that.
Kudos, Danny Kiewat. Force India, they are back in fourth place, 1 point ahead of Williams. But if I were Force India and when I was in Force India, I would actually be disappointed. They should have actually scored much more than the 8th place that Sergio Perez got. Of course, that was on a single stopper. But they were beaten by a McLaren, and that is not where their current form lies.
The Williams versus Force India battle is another one, Kunal, which I am sure will go down to the wire. And there's a few $1 million at stake here.
Well, by the way, Alonso's Singapore Grand Prix humor came post-race. He said that after the opening lap, he dreamed of a podium finish.
Unfortunately, I don't think he was joking.
That is called stretching your imagination a little too far, Fernando.
Well, a good race for Kevin Magnussen. He scored a point for himself and for Renault.
And he did so despite having a water bottle problem, a problem that I think I last had when I was in school. But I surely think that Renault owe him a drink and possibly a contract.
Let's just hope that a decision on Magnussen's future is made soon. You know, it would be quite mean and ominous of us to remind him that his birthday is only 2 weeks away.
And can you imagine if Sergio Perez is still haunted by that McLaren episode he went through, what Kevin Magnussen is probably going through?
Poor guy.
And yes, finally, since the new owners are willing to listen, here's the best advice that Formula One's current quadruple world champion gave in Singapore. He said, double the cylinders, simplify the electronics, and add an air condition. Well, okay, the aircon was specific only to Singapore guys, so do not take him seriously there.
But hey, I just remembered that Chase talked about a race in LA and New York and Miami. But what happened to Vegas? You remember, Ecclestone had promised us a race in Vegas.
He had promised us a race in India as well, but Vegas seems more fun, I agree. And finally, as we near the end of this really long and hopefully funny episode, here's a quick reference to former Formula One stars. First, a huge round of applause and congratulations to Alex Zanardi, former Formula One driver and now a Paralympian for, I think, his 4th Paralympic medal.
That's awesome.
It was a gold medal. That's absolutely awesome. And that's what true heroes are made about. But the second, of course, is there is some news out there about Michael Schumacher and we're not sure of its authenticity. So we'll just ignore it. But keep fighting, Michael. We really miss you.
Thank you so much all for tuning in. This is finally the end of this pretty long but pretty interesting podcast, I'll say.
Well, you get to take the checkered flag this time.
Thank you. So we're so thrilled that we have thousands of people listening to us every week. And if you like us, tell us. I know the people who don't like us are very happy to tell us that.
They tell us that every second day. So if you like us, we'd love to hear from you.
We're on Facebook and Google Plus and Twitter and I think everywhere else we could be. Just search for us as the Inside Line F1 podcast and we'll be there. Adios.